This conference will now be recorded.
Ready? Okay. Hey, it's 6 o'clock. Meeting of the Rome City Council will come together. Will come to order. It's January 26th. We're missing Kathy Koneski, but we do have a quorum, so let's get started. We're going to do the invocation. Pastor Van Zant's with us this evening, and he looks so handsome with his bow tie.
Join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for this day, and I thank you for everything that you've given us, Lord. I thank you for just this city, and I pray that you'll please us put your hand upon it, and I pray that you'll please us allow the city council to think about the patrons of Rome, and I pray that you'll please us allow them to have wisdom and understanding to make the best discernment in what we should do for this city. Lord, I pray that you'll please us continue to be with our first responders, and I pray that you'll please us be with them. And as they go and protect the city, I pray that you'll put a hedge of protection around them and just bring them home safely to their families, Lord. God, I pray that you'll please just allow us to continue to abide by your will and just allow us to be respectable citizens as well. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Pastor Van Zant. We'll go on to public comments. City council or council is not permitted to take action on or discuss any comments made to the city, made to the council at this time concerning an item not listed on the agenda. However, a council member or mayor may make a statement of fact regarding the item, make a statement concerning the policy regarding the item, and or may propose that the item be placed on a future agenda or direct the city administrator to contact the individual to address. If you are attending the meeting via live streaming, and you would like to make a public comment, you must email the city secretary at citysecretary@cityofrome.com prior to 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting and must identify each subject you plan to present to be recognized. If the writer of a public comment is unable to read their own comment, it should be given to a friend, family member, or associate that is able to attend in person and read the statement in their stead. Public comments made in person require the speaker to submit the sign-up form to the city secretary prior to the meeting, and the form must identify each subject the speaker plans to present. A statement of no more than 3 minutes may be made. There will be no yielding of time to another person. Comments should be directed to the entire council, not individual members. Engaging in verbal attacks or comments intended to insult, abuse, malign, or slander any individual shall be cause for termination of time privilege and removal from council chambers. And Ms. Odom.
Okay, the only speaker we have is Lisa Wilson, and I was also asked by council to state what the agenda item or subject is. So it's hate and negativity, Facebook usage, and Easter.
Okay.
I'm Joanne Wilson. I'm reading for Lisa Ann Wilson, 240 West First Rome, Mayor and Council. My topics are hate and negativity, citizen comments, City of Rome Facebook usage, and an Easter egg. It's kind of a mixed topic. The City of Rome this is from Lisa, my hometown has rich heritage, and I am proud that my family has strong roots here. Having said that, I do care deeply about how our city functions and how money is being spent. I will continue to ask for answers, as will many citizens. Last meeting, an audience member spoke of calling citizens like me as negative haters. That is not true. I do care deeply and will continue to make sure taxpayer money is spent wisely and prudently. This should be considered as positive. During the same previous meeting, the same individual commented, I felt, in an insulting way, that her comments relative to the bond that did not pass is that the older generation did not understand the need. In my humble opinion, that older generation has seen a lot of stuff happen in this world, and their opinion should be respected, even if it's not the same as theirs. Yes, I feel that the opinions of all age groups should be respected. The last meeting, it was discussed about citizens notification and other notification options for purchase. Until money is available, use Facebook to keep citizens apprised. And today that was done relative to a bad wreck that was down on 114. Thank you. I think our citizens appreciate knowing about that. Facebook is free. Social media is where things are happening. For instance, the city council appointed a new council member and approved hiring of a new fire chief. Wise County Messenger covered these well. However, most of our citizens do not subscribe to the Messenger or are unable to attend council meetings. Transparency is so needed. This same information could have been transferred to our Facebook page. Okay, here we go about Easter eggs. The same group that organized Easter and the Fall Festival this past year will again have an Easter egg hunt with 3 raffle prizes, including stuffed animals and no telling what. This is not a city event. This currently is a work in process. Stay tuned for additional information for this Saturday, April 1st event, but mark your calendar to attend. May I plug New York's place? New York is also having an Easter egg hunt beginning at 1 o'clock on that same day. So, hey, go to both and you should have a good time. Lastly, this is
Newark is at 10. I think ours is at 1.
right. Yes,
Right,
ma'am.
okay.
You're right. And for those that need to know, Ted Roher passed away, and his services will be at Hawkins Bar Floyd at 10:30 a.m. this Wednesday, February the 1st. So y'all don't forget Gail. Thank you.
Sometimes you can see, most of the time you can see who's online. Over here. Okay, very good, thanks. Sorry. All right, announcements. Filings begun for the council seats. January 18th, 2023. Last day to file for a place on the ballot is going to be February 17th, 2023. Do we have any other announcements?
I have a statement I'd like to make.
Okay.
I want to make the statement concerning the petition that has been brought up by a couple of people during public comments. This petition accuses Mayor Pro Tem of violating several items, including misuse of authority, neglect of fiduciary duties, violating the Texas Open Meetings Act, incompetency, and gross mismanagement of $1.2 million of public funds. First of all, he at no time misused his authority. The Mayor Pro Tem did not all of a sudden go rogue and start making these decisions all on his own. We, as a council, gave the authority, and the city attorney has verified that this is very much legal for us to do. As a matter of fact, the city attorney has verified that everything we did was legal. I'm fairly certain Mr. Atkins would not put his license on the line to give us advice contrary to what the law says. The same goes for the accusation of open meeting violations. The attorney has advised that everything we did was legal. Incompetency is another accusation. There has not been one instance I have seen where Mayor Pro Tem McCabe has been incompetent. On the contrary, he is very competent Mayor Pro Tem and wants to make sure all actions of the council are what is best for the city and the citizens and are above board and legal. I would think this is exactly what you would want from a council person. The gross mismanagement of funds, I'm a little confused on. I don't understand how Mayor Pro Tem McCabe somehow, through the actions of others on the council at the time, has caused us to be negligent with the city's money. He did not create an environment to cause people to leave. The petition, instead of looking at the actual cause of the issues that have mired this city, has made one person the scapegoat with absolutely no facts to back it up. It also says that one person we gave authority to is violating that authority. How is it when we gave him the authority? This petition is a complete contradiction. In my opinion, none of these accusations are true. Therefore, there is no reason for Mayor Pro Tem McCabe to step down.
Any other announcements?
I do have one quick announcement. I know it's a few weeks away, but Coffee with a Cop is February 18th from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. at the police department. So please join our officers so you can learn who's patrolling the streets and get to know them a little bit better.
Anything else? All right, let's go on to consent agenda. Items under this section are recommended for approval for the consent agenda. Items are a routine nature and require only brief deliberation by council. Council reserves the right to remove any item on the consent agenda for further deliberation. Number 1, minutes of City Council regular session dated January 12, 2023. Number 2, approval action on the fiscal year 2023 contract for the Rhome Community Library. Number 3, approval action of a resolution authorizing continued membership in the Encore City Steering Committee, OCSC, for the upcoming 88th legislative session. Number 4, approval action adding Juneteenth to the City of Rhome's observed holiday schedule. I like that one. I asked them last year why they were working. Anyway, do we hear a motion?
A motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, let's go on to regular agenda. Thank you for doing that. I asked them last year. I said, why are you working? All right. Regular agenda. Number 1, compensating reserve officers. That would be Eric Debus is going to come and talk.
Thank you, council members. You'll see in your packet before you, there's an agenda commentary on reserve officer compensation. Basically, right now we have 2 reserve officers. A reserve officer is licensed in the same manner as our full-time paid officers. And in some cities, reserve officers merely ride along with other officers. But in this city, our 2 officers are full-fledged police officers. When they come in, they prepare for duty, they get in a car, and they patrol the streets of our city just like any other full-time officer. Right now, they do so at no compensation. They come in on their own time, they give of their own accord, and they are compensated in no way. They don't get gas money. They don't get lunch money. They come in and they work alongside the full-time paid officers. And it dawned on me that, well, and when I was in Ms. DeGan's position, I had the experience of reading more of the local government code that I had before. And I came across the local government code that actually addresses this. And I will point you to local government code 141007. It basically says that the governing body, which is you guys of a municipality, may provide for the uniform compensation of members of the municipal police reserve force. If they are compensated, the compensation must be based only on the time served by the member in training or in the performance of official duties. And also members of the reserve force may serve without compensation. I have a budget for overtime pay, and thankfully that is robust enough that I was able to look at these numbers and work it to where if we paid a stipend similar to the volunteer firefighter stipend that some of those servants make, we could do the same thing with our reserve officers. Both of them have spoken to me, and I brought this to their attention, and they both said, that's not why we're here. We serve because we want to serve the citizens of Rome. But sometimes you do things because it's the right thing to do. And the right thing to do is to nominally compensate them for their time. The nominal compensation that I think is fair and is in a line similar to what the firefighters are paid for the volunteers is $12.50 an hour. I don't think anybody would say that was a huge compensation, because I know you can go to Buc-ee's right now and make $20 an hour. So what this does is this tells our reserve officers that they're not only valued, but they're also appreciated. And the budget allows for it. And if you guys want me to move forward, we will implement that plan. But it's up to you as the governing body to decide whether you want to move forward on something like that or not. And I know Councilmember Ty does have some questions.
So what other cities around here pay stipends?
So I could not find another agency in the state of Texas that pays their reserve officers. We would be setting the bar on this. But to that point, the other agencies that use less than full-time officers, they call them part-time officers, and they pay them a full-time wage in a part-time capacity, about triple what we would be paying as a stipend. They would hire them in as part-time officers and just have them work at full-time pay less than 32 hours a week. We aren't in a position to offer that.
And so those hours per month, what are they normally working per month? I know there's a minimum of 16 hours.
Yes, ma'am. So our current general order for reserve officers is that they are required to work 16 hours per month. That's their minimum. The two officers we have now average about 28 hours per month. If they do just their minimum, they do 16 hours a month at that wage that we have agreed would be fair. That would be $2,400 for the entire year for each officer. At their current rate, if they stayed with the hours they're working now, which is an average of 28, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, that would be $4,200 a year per officer. And right now, I have that in the overtime budget because oftentimes they supplement and are force multipliers on patrol. But sometimes when an officer calls in sick, somebody has to cover the street, and they come in and they work that position right now without pay. So instead of paying an officer, a full-time paid officer, time and a half to cover somebody who's out, the reserve officer can sometimes come in and work that shift. Right now they work it without compensation. This would tell them we appreciate them enough to at least to give them lunch money and gas money for their time spent here in the city of Rome.
And what is the maximum amount? Like if they could work as many hours as they wanted to within the month, how many hours?
They both work full-time in different capacities. So this is a secondary thing that they do because they really love doing police work and they really love giving back to their community. We don't have a maximum. I have written a maximum in this that they would not be allowed to work more than 12 hours in one day because that's a shift that we have now. It will be up to me and the other members of the command staff, including Sergeant Ritchie and Sergeant Soltaire, to manage this as a budget item like we would manage any other budget item. And because the government code allows us to not compensate them, we can work with them as we move along and say, you know, you've worked this many hours, we have this much money left in our overtime budget. If you want to continue this month, it will be without compensation. It's the government code allows for that.
just have a question for clarity.
Yes, ma'am.
So these officers are allowed to patrol alone. They don't have to be with another full-time officer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So, and you use the example of you had an officer, full-time officer calls in sick, then you can utilize a reserve officer to fill in, but now we have the option and ability to pay them when they help us out in that and keep our streets covered and the patrol, we have patrol that we need.
Yes, ma'am.
And the figures that you have, just to reiterate, are within your budget.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll make a motion.
Can I just ask a quick question? You said we've got two. Is that Daniel Roberson and Kirby Lord?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. That's it. All right. Make your motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept your recommendation.
I'll second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. Let's move on.
Thank you, council members.
Discussion and any necessary action concerning short-term rentals in the city.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is being brought to council this evening as simply a discussion topic to see if council would be interested in us pursuing any type of regulation as it relates to short-term rentals before it becomes an issue within the city. I have spoken to the city attorney. You all have his memo before you that outlines some changes or some guidelines that he would suggest for us. And so anything that we would draft would be in tandem with that recommendation from the attorney. One of the things in his particular memo to us that is separate and apart from the agenda commentary that I put in your packet is that he would recommend that we not do an outright blanket ban on all short-term rentals. That has caused some problems in other cities across the state as this has been challenged in the courts. We are still trying to work our way through what short-term rentals mean and how it affects the cities, because you all will see if you do any research on the internet, more and more of those rentals are being used in ways that were not intended by the original owner. Just this week, I saw another article about human trafficking being conducted through a home, I believe it was in Garland, and I know that's not here, but we are rural and people at some point may see this as a place for short-term rentals to become popular. You also see that drug usage and sales of drugs and short-term rentals are an issue. I have some experience with that in my previous city because it was not only short-term rentals in that area, but it also had a grass landing field for airplanes. And so we had issues that we had to police that quite a bit more carefully. You also see noise and nuisance concerns from neighbors when they rent the home out and it becomes 10 people in a house, a 3-bedroom with a 2-car garage. People are parking in the street. They're having parties late at night. And or you see an increase in traffic of people coming out. So we're bringing this forward to you this evening to get some feedback. If this is something that you want staff to start to pursue, it will take several months for us to put an ordinance together with Carbon's assistance that would be brought back to you for consideration. So I'm going to open the floor to questions at this point.
So we could place restrictions on those rentals, those short-term rentals, correct?
What he has said thus far is that we would be better served to come at it through the noise and nuisance ordinances that we have on the books now as a code violation, instead of trying to restrict the use of the private homeowners for that. The only caveat with that type of an approach, which I understand what he's saying to us as far as the legalities that have been challenged in the court, is it will rely on our officers to investigate. And we will also have to rely on the citizens through which to call in if there are concerns that they have, because you all are the first line of defense in the neighborhood. You all know what your neighborhood should look like. You all know who should be coming and going in that particular area. And so you can call and give us a heads up if you see unwanted traffic or a lot of people that you don't know coming in and out of a home that you know is either for rent or is vacant or is owned by Mr. and Mrs. Smith to some extent. So it would take some development and discussion with Carbon, but that is what he has recommended thus far.
So couldn't we have them, I guess, do permits?
Yes, yes. You can have them register as a rental. As a matter of fact, they are required to do so by the state. because as they do short-term rentals, they become in the category of hotel motel, and they have to collect hotel motel tax to remit it to the state, and then the city gets a portion of that. It's difficult to do, but it is something that the state has given to cities to use as a enforcement mechanism for this type of a pursuit.
Well, I was looking at Airbnb. I pulled it up and I noticed there was a few in Roanoke and there's a few in Haslett. So I didn't know if Chief Davis or if you had any experience with short-term rentals in the cities where Chief Davis used to work and where you work now.
I guess for us specifically, the noise and nuisance is a big one because we'll have somebody rent it out and then all of a sudden we have 50 to 100 kids show up and then everybody around them is calling us and we're having to go investigate that. So it's not just a noise and nuisance as much as it's now you're tying up a lot of your police officers. So, but the oversight as far as is the taxes, are the taxes the only oversight as far?
They're supposed to register with the comptroller's office that they are renting it out for that use. I have been told, but I have not verified this with Carvin, and this may be some old legislation, that the cities could also require registration so that we were on notice that that's what the facility was being used for, the home was being used for.
So in my former city, these became quite prevalent, and the issues you come across are quality of life issues. Noise ordinance violations, trash, littering, parking violations become an issue because sometimes, not always, but sometimes these houses are rented out for the night, but it's really used as a party place, and you'll have many more people come than were originally designed for. It may be set up a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home that you say can comfortably sleep 8, and 25, 30 people will show up.
Is that the norm though, or is that an exception to the rule?
Depending upon the owner, it's either the exception or the rule. If it's a I need to check my words. If it's an owner that is not paying as close of attention, it can become a regular thing. If it's somebody that's paying closer attention and is there on property especially, then it would be more of an exception than the rule. These can work, but they need to be regulated, and I think that's what Ms. DeGan is working for.
So how many of these kinds of calls have you had since you've been here in Rome?
I don't know that we've had any of these calls in Rome. I just checked on the map while I was sitting there, and right now I can't find any inside of our city limits. Doesn't mean they're not there, but I didn't see it on the one I checked. Because there's several different, there's different sites. Yeah, there's different operators of these short-term rentals.
Well, my years of experience of living next door to someone that offered his home to younger kids to come over and party. They don't need a lease. He wasn't renting it out. Maybe they handed him a few bucks, but he wasn't publicizing that it was for rent. But it was a party place, and all those things that you mentioned happens anyway. And then sometimes it gets worse.
This was before my tenure, correct? Because this is the first I've heard of it. And these quality of life issues, we would pride ourselves on in taking a look at and conducting rigorous enforcement. So those things didn't happen. I'm a strong believer in a person's home is their castle, and they should not have to put up with things like that.
Well, and I guess my point is that the calls came in just like what you're talking about. The number of cars, the number of kids, the amount of the racket, all of that kind of stuff, became apparent, usually within, I'd say, a 2.5 hour period. The kids beginning to show up.
Sure.
And So I was just wondering if we had seen anything that resembled, the trafficking and that kind of stuff here. I don't think that we can ever stop it, partying and that kind of thing. And grown adults can act worse than the kids. But I'm just saying, I was just wondering, what we'd seen here. I realize we're growing. I realize that we're going to have a lot more territory to cover and a lot more people and homes to be looking at. It's on the fast track, and if you haven't been down my street, well, it's happening fast. So I don't want to see it ever be here. At the same time, I really question what we can truly, I don't know that we can stop it, really. Just saying.
I mean, there's always going to be downsides to everything that we do. I mean, homeowners, there's been homeowners around town that have thrown humongous parties and get cops called on them, and they're not monthly rentals.
See, I just
So-
invite the cops whenever I have a party. I'm sorry.
But on the flip side of it, if we were to do the short-term rentals like Airbnbs, that bring tax money to the city, some other income. And there's a lot of people out there right now that are moving homes and they need a short-term place to live while they're building a new house or whatnot. But I know you got to research it, but is there some way to do, like if they file as a M&O, like 3 violations and we're revoking your
That's
license?
a
or
great
something?
question. I'd have to speak with
Okay.
Carvin about. He did mention when I talked with him today that there are some cities that have still gone with the outright ban. The city of Austin is the one that is most normally in the news for that because they really took it to the extreme and attempted to regulate that. But it is in Austin, and I'm sure they have a considerable amount of trouble with that type of a rental. So there are some parameters you can put on it. For instance, if it's more than 30 days, I believe it falls out of the short-term rental category, and therefore it wouldn't be subject to that, and it wouldn't limit our homeowners from using that as, I believe, a second income, as someone had asked prior to his. I'm basically just saying, do you want us to pursue this or not prior to growth in Rome? There are several ordinances and items that I think that we need to consider as a council and as a city that will put us ahead of people moving in, that we can educate them either as they come or they'll find it in our code and they'll know that before they move here or shortly thereafter versus chasing after that once they've moved in. This is just one of several items that as we continue to refine the code, we'll need to make some decisions on.
So I think at this point, we're not really making a decision on banning it or not. We're just having them research it. There's nothing hurting that just to get ahead of the game. So I'm fine with directing staff to research options on short-term rentals in the city.
And I know another option, as far as have new neighborhoods coming in, we can't get with the HOAs because some of them have clauses where if you buy a new home, you sign a contract with them saying you're not going to rent or lease or do anything along those lines for at least 2 years. So that would give more time if we have those HOAs coming in.
Okay. So we'll do some research and bring this back to you sometime this spring. It will just kind of fall in with the other items that we have on the burner and see when we can bring it back for council discussion. It will take several passes at this before you either feel comfortable with it or before you determine that that's too restrictive and you don't want to pursue it. Okay, thank you.
Let's go to number 3, discussion action relative to temporary paid time off for a severe illness such as COVID or flu through December 31st, 2023.
Thank you, Mayor. This is another item that I'd like to bring before council to see if we can grant some relief to staff. This continues to be an issue with us with severe illnesses, and it's not just COVID, it's flu, it's RSV, and other things of that nature. I did put in your packet that Governor Abbott extended his declaration that COVID presents a threat to the state, and I understand you'll have hot spots here and there. Public safety staff is already covered to a great extent on paid time off for this use, but currently the staff in Rome have one category of leave, and that's paid time off. We don't have it separated in vacation or sick leave. And so it causes some of staff to bring down their bank very, very quickly. And one of the questions that I did field from a council member was back when COVID was at its height, we didn't allocate COVID pay like many other cities did. And so when staff were ill, some for 2 weeks, some for over a week, they had to use that PTO bank and they depleted it. They're also not allowed to carry over a significant amount of paid time off from year to year as some of our neighboring cities allow for their staff. So what I'm putting before you is a request to institute a temporary program up until the time that we can revise the personnel manual or until we can discuss it further that allows for that. We recently had a bout of severe illness hit City Hall, and several of us were out for quite a long period of time. The program that I'm putting forward would allow 5 days leave for severe illness every 6 months. A doctor note would be required to use this temporary time bank. It would not carry over past the end of this year. It would not accumulate in a bank as far as accrual. Would not be allocated next year unless council makes a decision to that end. And as I mentioned, it could be revisited if the personnel manual is updated to separate out sick and vacation leave, which makes it a little more equitable for what staff are using. They could not be paid this time off if they don't use it. It would not qualify to that end. And it is really meant as a temporary stopgap measure, because what we're seeing is people who have deleted their PTO show up to the office because they need to take care of their family and they're ill, and it's infecting quite a few other folks, and it just moves around in a giant circle. So if that's something council is interested in, or if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any of those as it relates to this issue.
I think this is something that just about every business across the country is implemented because of everything. So and it doesn't affect our budget in any way, correct? So I would motion to approve.
Okay. And it's capped at 10 days per year, and it's just for this year, and it's for sickness.
And it has to be documented.
Okay, so did I hear a motion from McCabe?
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Very good. All right, move on. Community engagement options to increase information to stakeholders. City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. This is another topic that we are continuing from the last meeting that we had, or the first one that we had in January. I put at your place a piece of paper that looks like this. I was asked by Councilmember McCabe to bring back a firm price on the constant contact option, which allows for an electronic newsletter out to our residents and stakeholders as we can produce those. I did talk with their representative, and their cost is $70 a month based on, as you'll see at the top, 1,000 subscribers. If we exceed that, the price may change. I believe it's 0 to 2,500 subscribers. That is for the $70. And it would allow us that option to communicate through that messaging type as well as Facebook and some of the other things that brought up. In the interim, I did run across this company, which has a very interesting product, and as things become more app-based, I wanted to bring this one to you as well. This is from a company called GoGov. Shane, if you'll scroll up, this is in Adobe, so it doesn't make it easy to advance the slides, but they have several municipal customers and have been around for quite a while, and as you will go up to the next slide, please, ma'am. It talks about the variety of things that I have spoken to them about. So this module will actually allow for citizen notifications for us to push it out to people, and it would also interface with Facebook and anything else that we have as social media, so we could create one post and we could put it out, and it interfaces with our website. It also has a neat feature on this that allows the citizens to interface with us, so they can take pictures of code violations, they can take pictures of trash along the side of the road, they can send it back to us. They're able to track the work order to see how it's progressing through the system and who has responded, and a variety of other things that you see there that talks about workflow, and then it'll allow us to see on a map if we have hotspots of particular code violations that occur at any given time. Okay, please. It is also branded for the city of Rome, so we would come up with a catchy title for it, and we would allow, I mean, it's out there as a free app. People can download it to their phone. Go ahead to the next one. As I mentioned, it embeds with our web portal, so it would mimic, you could pay your water bill on that app. You could pay ostensibly citations to some extent on that app. You can see some of the things that they have put out here in the phone that's shown in the middle, similar to the one that we sent out this morning that talked about the traffic accident. We could push that out. And then, as I mentioned, you can allow for it to come back to you if they have code violations. Go to the next one. Keep going. A lot of this is just detail, but it's so much more robust for you to see what it may look like versus me just telling you on a piece of paper what it looks like. So these are the two options that I know of that might be beneficial to us. Back to the conversation that we had earlier, yes, we do intend for Facebook to become more active for the city of Rome, but it is only as good as the person who can put it out there. And unfortunately, we have not had enough time to give it quite as much attention as it deserves, but I'd like to use something that will interface across the board. So questions?
So out of all of these, well, what is the approximate price of this one? Do you
So
know?
this one is, the GoGov is $4,800 a year. They discounted the citizen portion of it, and I told them, I said, this is a very small city. I said, I need the price to be as low as you can get it. So they would only be charging us for the citizen request portion of it, for citizens to report back to us, but the ability for us to push out the notifications and the alerts they have discounted. So it's a total of $4,800 all in, no startup costs, no maintenance costs, no annual fee to train folks or fix any issues with the app.
It's just flat rate, 4,800.
It is more expensive than the Constant Contact, but it is also more interactive, and it's not just a passive communication system for our residents, and it is more dynamic. Just depends on which direction do we want to go.
So out of the four, what are y'all, I mean, y'all probably got to see them a little bit more than we have. What are y'all's opinions on them?
You can create a newsletter to some extent. In previous cities, we've used Constant Contact, and it is as good as your email address list is. If people don't sign up for it, the electronic newsletter is not going to reach them, but that's the same for most items. The app and Constant Contact would allow residents, businesses, people who just have interest in Rome to subscribe to it, and either direction it goes, the information will flow on GoGov. Constant Contact does not allow us to interface with social media as easily. I think there is a component piece of this that if you want to upgrade from the Plus package, it will integrate our social media piece, but I don't recommend that for us at this point because we're just new to this process and I don't want to overbuy something that's not going to be used. I did like GoGov because it had an amazing amount of support behind it, and they will help us set this up and help us manage it. There are an immense amount of reporting tools that tell you whether it's being successful or not. But it is, as I said, it's more expensive.
Would all this work in conjunction with the code red that was discussed before?
This can be to some extent, but we're not pursuing Code Red. We were going to go with the active alert through the county, which is $500 a year for all of the weather notices so that people can sign up for those. So we put Code Red on hold.
So it sounds like the GoGov would be easier to reach the people. You're basically telling them what's going on instead of them having to go look for the information.
Yes, it is to that extent. It also interfaces well with our website. There's a page that they would put on there that would take them back and forth as needed. It seems like a more seamless operation than what Constant Contact is. And in my previous experience, Constant Contact is effective, but if you don't have people that sign up for the system, just to some extent like GoGov, you're not going to get your messaging out. So some cities have resorted to not only the electronic portion, but the printed portion. And I have talked with New Fairview. They still do a quarterly printed mail out to their residents. And considering we have such a wide range of use of social media and a wide demographic, we may still want to consider that.
So where is the 4,800 coming from?
That's a good question. It is not budgeted this year, and so that would be something we'd bring to you as a budget amendment in mid-year as we look to move the budget forward through this year.
Well, can we possibly go with this is Constant Contact, this one that you printed out?
Neither one of these are budgeted. But I will tell you that.
But it's $840 a year compared to $4,800.
It is. And that's why I wanted to speak with council before we move forward on either one of these.
On the $70 a month one, so that's month by month, we can quit it any month?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
I've had a very hard time reaching Constant Contact. I've been trying to talk with their representatives since our last meeting, and it's been a bit of a challenge. I finally got them on an online chat back and forth to get this information. So I believe you can cancel that as you go along. The GoGov is for 12 months. We can certainly try Constant Contact and see, but I will say, if we start down one of these paths, it would probably be the one we stick with, because if we put all the time, effort, and energy into building the email database, it may be more difficult to switch to an app-based program later on down the road.
I'm usually the long-sided one of the group. And, I like all the whistles and the bells of GoGo. I really like the description, how the citizens can submit things, follow things. That the transparency issue becomes much clearer and easier for everybody. Not only are the citizens that are reporting such information able to follow along, it also gives the city council a way to follow along and measure that progress. But $4,800, I struggle with that somewhat here. So I guess maybe I would say that I would want to see where we were going to get that $4,800, and what would that come from? Could it be covered by the sales tax situation? Since we do pretty well in that category as far as income growth with that, revenue growth with that. But I'm still, it still takes somebody getting their phone out. It still takes somebody turning on their computer and signing in. We can never remove the receiving end's responsibility.
Correct.
To make it work.
That is correct. And I will tell you, not that that's going to necessarily give you any comfort, sales and use tax has outperformed the first 2 or 3 months that we have received notification from the state, but that's no guarantee it will continue to do so for the rest of the year. As mentioned, once I think we get our finances under us a little bit better and you have a clearer picture of what you do have versus where we're still struggling in the revenue department, that might make that decision easier. We could postpone either one of these for 3 months and bring it back, if that would give council some greater level of comfort to know where the financial aspect is going to come from for this, because it's not budgeted.
I'm concerned, especially since we were signed up for something previously that was similar to this, correct?
Code Red was not similar to this at all. It was just emergency notifications to some extent and recorded messaging that you could send out to call their phone.
But people had to sign up for it, and they didn't sign up for it. So I'm afraid if we spend $4,800 and then no one signs up for it, then we're out pretty much $4,800.
I agree. I am concerned, though, that based on the conversation that we had on Facebook, we really, if we're going to use Facebook, we need to use it more robustly to a great extent and reach people, and we need to advertise that that's where it's going out and notifications are coming through there, because I don't feel like that there are enough subscribers to our account.
So, are we allowed to take a survey
of residents?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So why couldn't we reach out through webpage, Facebook, whatever methods we have today, and say, this is what we're looking at. We want to know if we went this path and spent this money so that you could have these capabilities with the city, would you be in favor of that?
Well, it's funny you mention a survey because New Fairview just sent one out to all of their residents. And I know that Rome has done something similar in the past, but I would think prior to the budget season, that is something that council needs to have in front of them. So you know what the priorities of the community are from a broader lens, because I know we have several people who are involved, which is wonderful. I was just mentioning to Shayna earlier that my previous city, we never had anyone at a council meeting. And so it's great to have people come and interact, but we need a statistically significant survey response so that we know that we are pursuing the entirety of the outcomes that citizens want in Rome. The problem with doing it ourselves is you will not be able to exclude people who do not live in the city, because if it's online, it's just anyone asking that can respond. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Can we ask for their names?
You can, but it's not really hard to put somebody else's down.
Nothing is about, you know.
That is a true statement. But I will tell you that to conduct one that is through a vendor is not an inexpensive proposition. So we should do what we can to get the feedback level that we can. The new Fairview city manager is going to share that survey with me, and I'm going to see what questions they had on there, and I'd like to bring it to council for approval. And then I'd like to see how we can mail that out to all of the residences in Rome. Mayor, you have someone in the back. Yes. That is a true statement, and Constant Contact is a little more difficult to use because I have experience with this. But to be honest, GoGov has more support, but it is quite a bit more expensive. That's what I don't know at this point, because it takes me about half an hour to get a Facebook post scheduled or put together with all the relevant information and a photo that goes with it. And then when we reach, it talks about our reach is 250 people, but only 54 engaged with it. And that's a different story, because just because you scrolled past it on your Facebook page doesn't mean I was able to communicate anything to you. So out of a community of about 1,800 some odd folks, only 54 are engaging with our posts to a great extent. And that's even acute when we tried to put out about the odor issue in the police department. So it's something that has to be spread. People have to know that that's how we're using and that's how we're communicating, because it's a constant theme that they want to know what's going on in the city and they want more feedback from us, but we don't have a dedicated communications person, and it's difficult. Or it just isn't going to get done because of the priorities that we have that come before it. But if we can find something that has that level of support or is super simple to use, that would be great. For instance, the elections page on the website took me about 4 hours to get straightened around. And we really increased the level of the information on there. We put the packet online to file for office. We extended the verbiage considerably in ways that we hadn't done before. So it's worth it. It's just going to take a while, and there are several other parts of that webpage that need to be updated. So like I said, we can pause this if council's still a little uncertain on this for 3 months. It would give us time, hopefully, to finish that website issue and push Facebook a little bit more, and then we could revisit this. But I was asked to bring back a firmer price on Constant Contact, and this is what I've been told.
Okay, with what you presented, the paying your water bill, I think would be beneficial to help Julie, especially being on city council. I know taking away a permitting job and the pay, you can go and look at the budget to go and see what we took away from one pay of a job to give to another. And looking at the last agenda item, the last packet, to see what the permits were from last year to this year. There was like 243 from last year was 23. That is a lot of permits we gave to one person. So doing permits online would help. And I think this would be something beneficial for one person.
I
I
don't know
don't-
if it allowed permits, but it would allow
Kinda
for them
getting off topic,
to
Ashley.
pay their water bill.
I-
And that would be of help.
I thought it said on this one that you just,
It may have, I've not
Yeah.
explored that.
on this one, I think I just looked at it. But I think if there is one and there is something, I think that there, for another city that I was familiar with, that has an option where you can go and look at your permits. You can, like a construction company can submit a permit. They do not have to go into an office. It makes it easier for a construction company to do that. So if you want to even put in a swimming pool, you can look online. Also, something that I want to present to the council for the substandard buildings that goes along with your rental to the Airbnbs. You can go and look at that and see to another situation. But I am all in favor for this to help out. So if you can go into further, it is beneficial for our city and for the older generation to pull up an app and not go on to Facebook. I'm on Facebook, but I don't go on there all the time. And for the ones, Facebook for our city is negative, so a lot of us stay away from it. So
But we could put those permits on the website.
We do have them on the website and we can accept them through that. I think the thing that would, to a great degree, help Julie is if we could limit traffic into the office because she spends a lot of time at that window.
So is that to pay water bills? What is that mostly?
It's a combination of both water bills and permits.
I'd like to motion to table this for 3 months and direct staff to seek feedback from the community as well as look at budgeting for the cost of this.
A second?
A second, but I also want you to look at all the possible things that Ashley just brought up. You know, what can we maximize with it, I guess is a question.
I think if you all could have seen the demonstration that I watched, it would have been far more informative for you. However, I didn't have access to that here. All I had that access to that was at the office.
Can
So
you share that with us so we can?
it was done on the phone with the gentleman. He walked
Oh.
me through it. So I'd have to see what can they broadcast during a meeting so you can see all of the interactive devices of the app.
Thank you.
So we've got a first, we've got a second. Do we have a vote?
Aye.
Good. Let's move along. Legislative update regarding the 88th session of the state of Texas.
Thank you, Mayor. Earlier this week, I had a conversation with the city managers of Bridgeport, New Fairview, Aurora, and Decatur, and we discussed whether the councils of all of our cities would like to put out a council resolution outlining positions on bills that may be filed this time around in the session. Generally, in a lot of cities, a legislative platform will be put together by the city council and it will be circulated amongst your local elected officials. And if there is anything that we see that comes out of our legislative notifications, we can also contact that representative or senator who is sponsoring a bill and have conversations with them relative to the platform that council has given us. There are also some days that have been set aside in Austin called Wise County Days that are going to be on March the 6th and 7th. The city manager in Decatur and New Fairview will be attending that and will be running lead on this for most of us in the area, as well as working with the Wise County Chamber of Commerce in order to help get our positions out there amongst not only our local elected officials, but those that sit on certain committees that can be beneficial for transportation and finance, et cetera. So what I'm wanting to find out from council is, are you interested in reviewing a resolution that states your position on a variety of things, Some of the ones that had been brought up is support for transportation projects and funding in our area, funding for the Texas Water Development Board to help with water infrastructure projects, enhanced notification to buyers in a PID development, support for new grant opportunities for public safety needs such as body cameras and storage computers, giving city more input on MUDs, particularly the elections, the financial information and the limit on administrative costs, and also giving cities more input on MUD developments in our ETJs, as that can also affect our ability to provide services and govern. The opposition that was discussed at that meeting was council opposing any laws that would erode local authority in any way. It's always best to have flexibility at the lowest level of government that is closest to the people, which is you all. You all know what your residents are struggling with on a daily basis versus those that are in Austin. It would also oppose further state-imposed caps that affect ad valorem or debt issuance for the municipality to allow us some flexibility. Oppose limits to municipalities' ability to regulate zoning, annexation, eminent domain, building codes, etc., and any legislation that limits our abilities to negotiate economic development or Chapter 380 agreements. So that's the general platform or the conversation pieces that we discussed that would be very applicable across any city in Wise County through that end and frankly through many cities in the state. So I need to know, are you interested in us bringing forward a resolution to that effect with you if that's something that Rhome has done in the past? And do you want to pursue that option?
I think it sounds like something that definitely all of the for and against affects us. I mean, with the growth that we have coming, we definitely need to have a voice in what goes on in those things. So I'm for, looking into a resolution for that.
It's not abnormal for a city to do this. It's actually more routine business as it relates to each session as it's coming forward. Usually we have this hammered out and then we will go speak with the local representatives just so that they have a face and a name, and then we can find out who their staff support are. So if we need to reach out at the last minute, we're able to do that. But I couldn't find any place where we had done this before. So
I don't think we've ever done anything like that as far as I can remember. But it would be nice that we do have a voice in some of these things going forward. So
we're very fortunate that the city manager in New Fairview is experienced in this area. When he worked for the city of Denton, that was one of his major tasks, was interacting with the elected officials. So he and Mr. Mara from Decatur are running points, and that's going to be helpful because in addition to the resolution, they will be traveling down to Austin with representatives from the community from both the school district area, the chamber area, the elected officials area, and we'll be speaking to those people on both the 6th and the 7th of March. So the second part of this question is anyone on council interested in attending Wise County Days in Austin? It's not required, but I'm offering it through that lens that we also don't have any of this budgeted, but I didn't want you to not know that was available. Okay. Then we will put together a draft resolution and we will bring it back to you all at the February meeting. It is mostly finished at this point. I just needed to make sure that there weren't any other special interest topics that we wanted to include in the resolution because it will be drafted and issued from our city council perspective. So if there's something local, we want to put that in there, but I think we've covered a considerable amount of that in the water and wastewater and the rural development through that lens, which is very important to us.
Do you need a motion or anything?
No, ma'am, just
do it.
direction.
Okay, very good. Number 6, rescheduling the April 27th, 2023 City Council meeting.
Okay, so currently our April 27th council meeting is the last meeting in April. However, we do have early voting happening that week in this facility. So we will not be able to occupy this
We're
building.
going to vote here.
Yes, ma'am.
Very good.
So,
Yes. Great.
so they're going to need a couple days to set up. So April 22nd through May 2nd, we will not be able to have anybody in here at all after hours.
Okay.
So do you want to reschedule that meeting.
Can we just
Or-
not cancel it for that month?
That will be at council's direction through that lens, because I can try and bring things forward at the April and the first meetings in April and May, but it will make for a longer evening if we skip a council meeting.
What's the, when does early vote start?
Early voting starts on 24th, April 24th.
Through May 2nd?
That is correct.
Very good.
So we
What
would
does
be
council
able to
wanna
have
do?
a meeting April 20th. We do have a meeting scheduled April 13th. Or we would be able to, that's kind of the only option.
Okay.
Is the week of the 17th.
I'm not in favor of canceling a meeting. That makes us not have any business taken care of for a month when we skip a meeting.
Okay, so what do you recommend?
Then let's do it the 20th.
Okay. Want to do the 20th? Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Right?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And as I talked to you earlier, does any have for executive session? We don't have an attorney here.
Nothing that I know of.
Very good. Let's motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Who was the second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
We're out of here. That's a wrap. Okay. Thank you.